Hey everyone. See a lot of people jumping in. We'll give them another moment here to get started, get in here. Oof, the number just keeps climbing. We're having more and more participants joining. Wait till that number slows down just a little bit and we'll get started. All right, looks like it's leveling out. All right, so first thing I want to let you guys know is we have made it easy for you to enable live translated captions. So if English isn't your first language, there's some easy ways to make sure you can get this translated and understand everything that's going on here. To do it, you click Show Captions in the Zoom toolbar. You click the up arrow next to the captions. You select your caption language, choose your preferred language, and captions will automatically appear in your selected language. So feel free to go ahead and do that to get started. All right, so welcome everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm going to give you a quick little intro. I'm Aaron Thomas. I'm the Director of Engineering at LoadSmart for Opendock. And my buddy Louise here is going to be handling the chat, answering questions for you as we go through the process. There will be a formal QA at the end. And so don't worry, you'll have plenty of time to get all the questions you have answered. And we are recording this, so there's no pressure to catch everything live. A couple of housekeeping rules before we get started. Again, this is being recorded, so be aware of that. And it will be shared with you afterwards, so you'll have full access to it. Probably a really good thing. I talk really fast, so being able to watch it again a little slower might help you catch everything. I will try to be slow, but I speak pretty fast generally. Use the chat for questions throughout the whole process. Feel free to type them. You will be muted, so you won't be able to speak them out loud. So type out your questions in the chat box or the questions area. Louise will answer them as we go when he can, and others will save towards the end of the session. We have a couple of live polls, so we would like you to participate in our live polls. In fact, I believe we're about to pop one up right now for you guys. And so go ahead and feel free to click to finish out those live polls real quick. It won't take you that long. They're going to help you understand a little bit more, see where you are when it comes to AI and how that's affecting your businesses, and then see if you're maybe interested in joining us later on for a pilot program that we have going using our MCP. And there will be some additional help and resources. After the session, we'll share everything for you. You get contact details, next step for those who are interested in our pilot program, and admission to our Slack channel so that you can get access to us directly if you need to. All right, so we will get going here. So go quickly over your agenda. I'm gonna first of all express the challenge you guys have today booking against our APIs, especially from the carrier side of things. As a broker, a 3PL, 4PL carrier, there are some challenges with it, and I want to make sure you understand the challenges as they are today and what we're doing to directly address them. Then we're going to go over the changes we made that will fix them. Then we're going to go over some new future stuff that I really want to talk about. MCP. It's really not future anymore. The future is here. And using AI is a part of how the world works today. And it can really make your world much easier when it comes to booking appointments. And we're making it possible to make Opendock part of your agentic workflow. I'm going to show you various ways to create appointments using AI and even doing operations like bulk operations and whatnot. And then we're going to ask if you want to get started and join our pilot program. And some QA at the end. So the challenge, this is the first part. I'm going to go to the next screen so we can see it a little bit better. The challenge, booking at scale is hard. We have over 4,000 warehouses at Opendock. Each of them has their own configuration, every single one of them. So when you try to book at one warehouse, you're going to have one set of custom fields. You go to another warehouse, it's a completely different set of custom fields. Maybe they're going to be asking for PO numbers. Other ones are going to be asking for BOL numbers. And trying to handle all that via an API is a little bit challenging. You really aren't going to be able to build one integration that works everywhere. You kind of are building an integration for each of those warehouses that you want to book appointments against. It's a bit challenging, and we definitely wanted to make sure we address that appropriately. So the old booking flow, this is kind of how it worked. You first had to get your warehouses. After you got your warehouses, you had to look up your load types. Then you had to get more details from your warehouse. You had to look up what the booking rules were associated with it. You had to find the custom fields associated with that warehouse, so you know what data you need to supply that specific warehouse is asking for. You'd also have to look through our custom forms, which is a bit challenging and not nearly documented as well as it should be. But custom forms was a whole other way we were doing custom data, and you'd have to look that up for the various load types you were working with. Then you'd have to interpret all of those fields manually, no API helping you. You just have to understand based off of the names of those custom fields what data the customer was trying to ask for. You have to put all this data together so that you can actually get a coherent body to submit when creating an appointment. Then you'd have to query our availability engine to find out when there are open times to book this appointment. Then you'd have to add that to that body you've been building of all this custom information. And then you have to post the appointment. And the problem is there's no standard field naming. One warehouse might call it BOL, another one calls it bill of lading, and another one just calls it reference. So it's challenging to know from one warehouse to the next what data you really needed to supply in all of those custom fields. The extra calls caused a lot of problems. Because the custom form schema is so varied per warehouse, it was really challenging to figure out what schema you need to supply for this specific appointment you're trying to create. And so that's what we are resolving for you here today. So we've added some new changes to our carrier booking API. The reason I'm stressing the carrier side is that's where the biggest challenges is. You're booking at a lot of different warehouses. And so you need to have one kind of process that works really well across that entire flow. So what's changed? Well, before we had multiple, mostly documented API calls you had to make, hard-coded information per warehouse, no standard field names, and separate calls needed to get availability, which just complicated the process. Now you pretty much have one call that rule them all. You still have to do a couple of checks in advance, but basically once you get to our appointment requirements endpoint, it solves the world for you. It gives you all the information you need to have. It works in any warehouse. There's zero hard coding necessary. We've included semantic labels in that, which allows you to understand from one warehouse to the next what information they're looking for. The availability comes right back in that same call as you do it. And the real win that we're going to show in a minute is we actually provide the body of what that call is for you. So you don't have to combine the results from multiple calls, put them together in a solid body in order to create your appointment. Instead, we actually tell you exactly what it should look like. So the 4 steps to book an appointment. You have to search for your warehouses and find the warehouse you want. Fortunately, since you're probably booking multiple times at the same warehouse or a variety of warehouses, but multiple appointments at those warehouses, you don't need to do this multiple times. You can cache this information. This is really about identifying what's the warehouse you want to do and grabbing that ID that you can use in later requests. Then you're going to want to get the load types for that warehouse. Various loads are going to choose different load types, and every warehouse has the ability to customize their load types how they want. So it's not super easy to figure out which one you want all of the time, but we are making that easier as well very soon with semantic labeling for get load types. We're just not there quite yet. Then the third call you make is the get appointment requirements. You take the ID you got from your warehouse, you take your load type ID that you have, and you call get appointment requirements, and that tells you everything you need to know about how this works. You'll get all the information you need. And I'm going to give you a demo here in a moment that's going to show you what that really looks like. But then you take that ready-made payload and you create an appointment. Makes it considerably easier than it used to be. So the centerpiece of this, again, as I said, is that get appointments requirement. On the left here is an example of what it looks like. You're passing in a warehouse ID, a load type ID, and a range for when you would like to schedule your appointment, when you would like the start date of the appointment to be. It returns your available time slots. It returns all the required fields you're going to have, regardless of where they are in our system. It provides semantic labels for all that custom information and that example payload. So we'll quickly go through the results of them here, and then I'll actually run you through the scenario of it. So first, logging in to our system is fairly easy. You just call the auth login endpoint with an email address and a password, and you get a token. That token has a TTL on it based on your role. If you have an elevated role, the TTL is fairly short. If you have a role that has very little access to our system, then your TTL is quite a bit longer, and you don't have to call this as often. But you take this access token you get, and you'll use that for authorization on all future calls. Then you search warehouses. It's as easy as calling search warehouses and having a search term in there. In this case, I'm searching JWB, and it returns to me a list of warehouses and some fields to help me identify what that warehouse is. Is it at the right address, that sort of thing. Then you call get load types. That will allow you to know, that'll get you all the load types that we have for that thing. So you can pick the right load type for the particular load you're doing. We provide a bunch of information that helps you out with that, like the direction, the operation, equipment type, the transportation mode, and a solid name. You can again cache this at each of the warehouses you go. These don't change that often. So you can be pretty consistent about doing this once. As long as you have a similar load to before, you can just save this load type off and not have to make those calls. So really, if you cache those two off, every time you go to make a call to create an appointment similar to one you've done in the past, this is the first one you call, this get requirements. You pass the warehouse ID, the load type ID, and you get back all the information you need. I have a couple of screens here to show this. This first screen here on the right is showing kind of how we return the custom field information. In this particular example, there's a custom field called bill of lading. That's what the warehouse named it. The label of it is bill of lading number. But we also included a semantic label, a slug for it that says BOL number. That way you'll know from one warehouse to the next to the next. You should be able to find BOL-number as one of the slugs, and you know where to put your BOL number with it rather than having to guess which custom field it belongs to. We also included human readable descriptions on here, the bill of lading number identifying the shipment's transport document. That's so as you're learning to build these API, these integrations to begin with, you can learn what our fields really are about, how they're intended, and get more information on it. When you automate the process, you probably won't use those so much, but they're great for helping you understand what the configurations are at each of our warehouses, which was really challenging to do before. What also returns with the get requirements is this next piece. That's the start, showing which values you can suggest for starting your appointment. It includes all of the available start times. That's already run through our availability engine. So it has all of the rules baked into it already. Each of these is currently available for you to schedule an appointment when you see this, rather than guessing and finding out the appointment you tried to book wasn't available, or calling get availability and then trying to figure out how to jam that into your body that you already had. We return the results right here. But the real bread and butter of this one is the last part on the right. We have an example property that we're returning, and that actually has the exact body you could submit to create the appointment. All you have to do is fill in the values for the custom fields. You populate those values for the custom fields, put your right start date, if in case you want not the first start date on there, and submit it, and you can create the appointment right away. And then you call our create appointment endpoint with that data, and you get the results of an appointment being created. So I'll show you this in action right now. Let me come over here and switch this, and I will start a little thing. Now, I created this in Python as a script to help me make it cleaner and easier to show you what it looks like, but these are the legit curls and responses coming back. So in this particular example here, I'm logging in, same thing I showed earlier, and the response I get back is access token. I hid it so nobody has to see that one, and it shows my TTL. Now that I'm logged in, that's going to be used in the future ones. Now what I'm doing is just I'm collecting some data. I know I'm going to be searching for a certain warehouse. So I'm just typing this in advance just to make it a little bit easier. But this is the curl that I'm generating from this one. I'm generating our warehouse search autocomplete curl. The search term I'm using is JWB, and I'm showing the limit of the amount of items I want to get back, just so I don't get every warehouse in our system. I just get a small set. You can refine your search to help you get the appointment you're looking for. The response that comes back is an array of all the warehouses that match that query you're doing. Here's an example. Again, it doesn't come back saying more fields. I shortened that so we can display it on the screen better, but it shows the warehouse, the address, the facility number, the city, state, and a bunch of other information about that warehouse, so you can be sure you're grabbing the right warehouse. Once you've got the warehouse, then you have to choose that one and select that ID and use it. Again, this is my Python script making it easier for me to be lazy. I'm going to choose the bakery as the warehouse that I'm going to be scheduling this appointment against. So I'm putting in 2 there. Now, this is the next curl you would do. This is to get the load types. I'm passing in the warehouse ID to our load type one, and it's going to return, as you can see here, the load types that are associated with this particular warehouse. In this particular example, the first one on the list was my outbound dry FTL, but there are 5 others. It gives you information to help you identify that it's the right load type, the operation, equipment type, transportation mode, etc. So I'm going to select the first one on my list here. And now I'm going to call my get appointment requirements. This is the bread and butter of our recent changes, this one. This is the one that brings all the magic. It's as simple as I have the warehouse ID, the load ID, and then a window of where I'm looking for that appointment to be scheduled. That's all there really is to it. And what it returns is really big. I'm going to scroll over it for a second so you guys can kind of see what all it has in here. Again, this is primarily all the extra information here is primarily meant for you as the integrator partner to be able to understand how our system is designed, how customers did configuration and whatnot. So you can see the custom fields, the types of those custom fields, the example of how to use that custom field properly, the semantic labeling that we have for each of these fields here. All this information is added right here to it to make it easy for you to identify these fields across warehouses. We also provide very long descriptions of what all that is about. We also describe our load types, our docs, the start property, which is the property you use to determine when you want that appointment to be created for. And I just truncated these values here, but again, it's showing you these are all the accepted values, meaning these are all the true availabilities today to book this appointment. And again, descriptions to let you know kind of how that works at this warehouse, because every warehouse has their own rules, and we return to a description of what those rules mean for this particular warehouse. So let's go down to the real bread and butter, my favorite part of it. This is the example spot. Well, I'll show it to you real quick right here. And this is the example body being returned. It is a valid response to creating an appointment. It already gives you everything you need to know. It includes the custom fields with a field for value for you to replace the appropriate value there. It gives you this other custom field with its value, more of them. It also gives you a start date value here that you're going to want to replace with your valid start date, the one that you actually want to use when booking this appointment. You can also include ref numbers and a variety of other things. So we're going to go through this example. I do want to schedule it for the first available appointment here. I'm going to supply it a reference number. I'm going to give it, let's see, PO 4242. And I'm not going to give it any notes. For the bill of lading, I'm going to give it BOL 4242. An ingredient type in this one is going to be dry bread. No allergens in this one. This is what the body looks like before it sends it, but it just filled in all the values that I just did. That again is not magic. That's just my Python script populating that body so that I can send it in. I send it, and an appointment was created, and you see it show up here in the warehouse. So this is live, me actually doing it. This isn't just smoke and mirrors. I just created the appointment via the API there. So that's the changes we've made recently to our APIs to make it easier if you want to do our APIs directly. Now the more exciting part, the part I'm really excited to get into, that's our MCP and agentic workflows. This is how you can make Opendock very, very much part of your agentic workflow. You can do hands-off creating of appointments, automate the entire system. If you are using any of the newer TMSs, OTM, SAP, anything, they're all including connectors to, sorry, I'm losing my voice. They're all including connectors to external MCP servers like Opendock has built. And you connect that and make it very much part of that workflow. So briefly, what is an MCP? It's really just a standard protocol that allows systems to talk to each other, allows AIs to talk to each other more easily. So think of it like a regular API, but it's designed for AI agents instead of humans. It's a very significant structure. We can give it lots of instructions and rules and descriptions. I can define tools that you have access to, resources that can supply you more information, and even prompts that can help guide you down the right path. All of those baked into our MCP server make it very easy for whatever agent you're using to interact with them and make good decisions off of this. It works with any AI client. You can use Claude. I use that for some of my examples here. You can use ChatGPT. You can write your own agent. I have an example of an agent that I can show people later. I don't have time for it in this demo, but I created my own little agent to go ahead and connect to it, and it works beautifully for everything. But any MC-compatible system can connect to it. I tried to go forwards and it didn't go forwards. Try it again. There we go. So any system can be the trigger. The reason I'm talking about this is I know a lot of you guys are going to want to automate how things work in your system. You're going to be collecting information from various carriers or yourself, and you're going to have a list of where they want to book and what they're booking, what their BOL numbers are, what their PO numbers are, various information they want to supply. And you're going to collect it via emails, phone calls, and a variety of other ways. And you want to automate this to create appointments so that you don't have to have a person in the middle. And this can easily be triggered via email, your TMS, WMS, ERPs, a chat or a Slack could do it, or even just dropping a spreadsheet into something like Claude can trigger this and make this happen. It's very straightforward. And I've got some examples of that coming up here in just a moment. So let's go over the email example. So this is an example of somebody sending an email to a customer or to a broker saying, hey, I'd like to book this appointment. They can have an agent that reads that email, extracts all the information it can from the email, then it goes through those 4 steps via our MCP automatically, and then it books the appointment and returns the confirmation. The customer gets the confirmation email. So we have a demo of exactly that happening. I'm going to play that for you. This is something I did yesterday.
Here's a carrier sending a plain language email to schedule 3 inbound appointments at JWB's DC in Martinsville on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, as early as possible, with BOL numbers included. The email hits the inbox, and Claude picks it up automatically via a scheduled task. No one at JWB has to touch it. Claude reads the request, identifies the warehouse, determines the load type, inbound LTL based on the 26 pallets, and checks availability for all 3 days simultaneously. Earliest available slots are 10 a.m. on all 3 days. Claude creates all 3 appointments at once. Watch them appear on the calendar. Back in Gmail, 3 confirmation emails from Opendock have already arrived, all booked and confirmed. 0 manual steps.
So that was an example. I just wrote that yesterday and then recorded it. And it was pretty straightforward to do using our MCP. So I wanted to show the power of how easy it is to do things like that. What it did, again, I want to just briefly mention, it kind of ran through these same 4 steps. It searched for the warehouses and it found the warehouses. What I've discovered is if you put in some really crazy stuff and it's not sure which warehouse you want, the agent directly asks you, hey, I'm not sure I found the right warehouse. The way I set it up in one of my demos I did earlier is it would reply with an email back to the original person who sent the email saying, I've got some of the information, but I'm not sure which warehouse you want, or I had some required custom information that you didn't supply. Here's what I'm looking for. And then you could send a second email. That person could send a second email with that information. And the agent just picks up immediately and said, okay, I know what you want me to do, and continued creating the appointments for it. So it does the searching, it gets load types, it calls the appointment requirements to get the shape of everything and to understand what it's looking for, and then it creates the appointment. You don't need to have custom code per warehouse. The agent can figure that out directly from our appointment requirements or get appointment requirements endpoint. And I also want to show you can do bulk operations. I mentioned earlier from a spreadsheet. This is an example here of creating appointments by basically taking a screenshot of a spreadsheet of some information, dropping it into Claude, and having it use our MCP to create those appointments. So let's get that one started.
I want to bulk create some appointments at my Ember Hall warehouse, so I ask Claude to handle it for me using the Opendock MCP server. Then I copy and paste a snippet right from my spreadsheet into Claude and let it get to work. It finds the warehouse and all the load types. Then it looks up the scheduling requirements for each appointment, all at the same time. While it's pulling that together, let's open up the warehouse grid so we can watch the appointments come in as they're created. Now that Claude has everything it needs, it fires off all the appointments. And there they are. Claude wraps up with a full list of everything it created, along with a note on the 2 BOLs, where it had to find alternate dates due to no availability on the requested day.
So that's, in my opinion, a great example of some bulk operations that before were a little bit challenging. You'd have to loop over a script and you'd have to identify everything for every one of the warehouses. You'd have to put it all together. Those could have all been different warehouses. They happen to be the same one. but it could have handled sending them all to different warehouses, just like it does doing a single call. And so what I want to know now is who would like to help us? Who would like to join us with this? Who would like to participate in our MCP pilot program and work with us to improve this process, and so you guys can have more automated processes? The pilot program for it is by closed invite only. It's only going to be in our staging environment till we get it to the place where we're really happy with how it works before we move it into production. You'll have a direct line to our engineering team. You'll be part of our Slack channel on this one. A direct line to myself and to Luis and others, so we can discuss this and really build out the solutions that works best for you guys. What we're really looking for: carriers, brokers, 3PLs that are already booking via Opendock, but want to automate that process. I'm hoping you're going to have an engineering team that's available for a quick onboarding call so we can discuss how it works and everything associated with it. And then I hope you'll be willing to share the feedback afterwards so that we can prove this to work best for you. So there's a poll right now for anybody who's willing to sign up for this one and see if you're interested, and we'll reach out to you and see if we can get your help. So what it actually takes to be part of this: just an MCP client. You can use Claude, you can use ChatGPT, you can use a variety of other clients that you have. You can create your own client, as I did. It's very straightforward to be able to make this happen. So any MCP compatible agent, and there's zero custom booking code required. You don't have to know anything about our system. Right now, you have to know quite a bit about Opendock's APIs. You don't have to know it anymore if you're going to use a system like this to handle it for you. Optional Opendock API knowledge really helps, because then you are more familiar with what it goes and you can see the differences that it makes and help us make it even better for you. And that's all I had. If you guys have any questions that haven't been answered yet, I'd love to make sure we get those answered for you.
Harold, we have some questions that I think it's worth sharing with the whole audience. One of them is from Daniel. Daniel says, in the UK, South America, and Africa, most drivers and carriers are accustomed to use WhatsApp to booking appointments. Is the MCP able to ingest such requests?
Honestly, I do not know how WhatsApp would be able to connect to an MCP. I don't know yet if they've built connectors to MCPs. That's actually a really good question about how that works. But it does have to be a system, an agent that's designed, a client that's designed to be able to connect to an MCP server. It doesn't receive messages from WhatsApp directly. It would actually have to be connecting to a server for that one. So I have to get more information on that one. It's a really good request. We can see how that would be possible. I'm sure you could build an integration that would receive those messages that are coming from WhatsApp, like we do with our two-way communication in Opendock right now, and use that and send it to the MCP server to make it happen. So I guess now I would say, yes, you can absolutely do it. You just have to be able to capture those messages that come from WhatsApp directly and send them to the MCP server. But it could be done.
Yeah, it all depends on the MCP client, right? What sources the MCP client can connect to. If it is able to connect with WhatsApp, then great, it will be able to ingest messages, audio recordings, and whatnot, and forward it to the MCP server.
Yeah.
We have another question from Laura. Laura mentions that she only books like a couple loads a week through the website. If she has to learn the new process, or if it is completely optional.
No, this is completely optional. You don't have to use any of this at all. If you are using our API directly, you should learn how our API works. If you are just using our client application, you don't have to know any of this at all. This is only for people using our APIs if they want to improve the process of booking APIs. When it comes to the MCP side, it's not necessary at all. It would only make things easier for you eventually doing it, depending on what your process is. But if you're booking a couple of load types, not necessary. Although there is a real advantage to it. I could show you this if we had time. We don't have time, unfortunately, for what I would like to show you in this one. I could just ask Claude to go look up an appointment I've booked before and book me one just like it next week using a different PO number. And that's all I have to ask it. Pretty much exactly that sentence. And it will go find the appointment that already existed with that PO number that I created before and book a new one next week with another PO number. And so that's the kind of thing that could save you time. Rather than booking them each week, you could just open up Claude connected to our MCP server and post in your PO numbers and say, I'd like to make this work. I'd like to create these appointments like I did last time, kind of thing. Look up my appointments that already exist and return this information. That's very doable.
Jaylin is curious. What parameters are we using to determine the load type? Is it determined by pallet count, customer, carrier name? How are we determining the load type?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand you, and I don't see which question that is. Where is it here so I can read it?
What parameters are we using to determine the load type? Is it determined by pallet count, customer, or carrier name?
Yeah. Yeah. So when you're doing it directly via our API, that's where it becomes a little bit challenging because again, every warehouse can customize how they name their load types. And some people name their load types, some warehouses name their load types in ways that really make it clear what they're for. They may have ones that say 1 to 8 pallets, for example, and another one that says 9 to 16 pallets or something along those lines. Others will name them after the carriers they want to use those specific load types. So that is one of the configuration customizations that becomes a bit of a challenge for us to say definitively how it always works. Um, Without the MCP doing it yourself, it does mean you'd have to look at those load types that come back and then remember for this customer at that warehouse, this is the load type they would use, and then use our appointment requirements endpoint to get the custom fields that are associated with it and book it. Using the MCP, it's actually pretty brilliant at being able to determine the right load type. I had one of my warehouses where load types were named after the carriers, and I sent it an email, and in my email signature, I just put JWB demo. I didn't even tell it what that meant. And the client was able to recognize that that was my name as a carrier, and it found the load type associated with that. And it was the most accurate load type. But if it can't determine it, it can ask you, like, hey, I found these load types. Which one did you really want to use?
Cool. Jack asked, for the demo booking an appointment using the MCP server, do you have any estimate on the token consumption used to process this single request, or any numbers related to transactional volume relative to token consumption?
Yeah, I didn't capture that information, so I don't want to give you a false answer on that one. I didn't capture how many tokens it consumed to do so. I did use Haiku as the engine, as the agent, which is not nearly the most powerful agent. It's down there a ways, and it was more than effective to be able to handle this. I didn't need to use one of the more expensive, more powerful agents. But I don't know I don't know how many tokens it really used to do this. That's a good question, and I will actually find out how many tokens it's used, and we can include that information we give to people later if you're interested.
Yeah, it would be interesting to run some benchmarks like against like different models and see like which one does the right thing more often and also with consuming the
Yeah.
least amount of tokens. Good. Daniel asked, I presume most brokers, carriers are not technical familiar with cloud as an MCP client because it's quite technical. We will have to train them on how to connect their cloud to Opendock MCP.
Yeah. So how I would answer this one is, again, it's not required for somebody to use our MCP, right? We're providing this as an option. I imagine initially people are going to slowly ramp up with that, but over time people are going to become more familiar with collecting clients to MCP servers and using them. When we get there, I'm more than happy to help people learn how to do this one. For example, I could easily show you how to connect your Claude to our Opendock MCP server. So if somebody was going to be part of our pilot program and you wanted to experiment with this using Claude, I would definitely show you how to connect that. It's pretty straightforward when you get to that part, and I can make sure that I can show you how it happens. It's more challenging when you get to other kinds of clients sometimes. I actually struggle getting ChatGPT to connect because they don't make it as easy to connect to external MCP servers. But Claude is one of the ones that actually made it fairly easy to do.
Thornton says they are a service provider to a local hospital, and they work with 4 warehouses for this customer. They have like sensitive appointments, time-sensitive appointments, repeated weekly. vehicle requires use of specific docks at each warehouse. Is there a way they can book out appointments 3 to 6 months in advance in bulk with these specific requirements? Or do they still have to book appointments manually each week? It's a repetitive process that they would think that they could integrate.
Yeah. So the rules,
Yeah.
the rules at each warehouse dictate how far in advance you can book appointments, and that's what your real limiting factor is. For example, they may only want carriers to book appointments no farther than 3 weeks out, as an example. And then you'd have to abide by those rules. We don't allow you to skate around these rules, but by using this just facilitates the process of being able to book those appointments. But what it would do very well for you is you could have an automated process that books those appointments week after week after week so that somebody doesn't have to manually do that. You could create a task, again, using Claude as an example. You can create a task in Claude that every Monday or every Friday books appointments for next week or 2 weeks from now, as long as the warehouse has that much, allows you to book that far in advance. You could automate it and have it just book it automatically for you. Again, as I said, the rules about how you can do the booking of appointments is still dictated by the warehouses, and they have their rules about how early you can book, like how far out in advance you can book, and also how close to right now you can book, so that they aren't booking appointments for today and disrupting their plans. And we don't allow you to get around that. We actually follow by those rules straight up through this whole process.
Yeah, but to eliminate like the manual work of doing that, like if you are doing every week or so, because the MCP can understand their schedule and schedule like on the best, like the optimal slots.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is, I mean, that's a pretty straightforward task within Claude to be able to say, hey, every week I want you to do this. And you give it the information. You could even do things like put data in a spreadsheet, including your PO numbers and BOL numbers or whatever the things that you have associated with it. And then just tell Claude to process that file every week. And it'll process that file, create those appointments for you. And then you don't have to manually make sure that happens. You'll get the email showing you that it happened and that it worked.
Yeah. And if all of a sudden one of the warehouses changes their settings or their rules, you wouldn't have to change an existing integration because the MCP would be able to interpret those changes and adapt the parameters of the appointment.
Yeah, that's one of the real beauties of moving towards things like using an MCP server in the middle and using agents. Like when we were building our APIs, we've been very careful to not change our contracts so that it didn't break any integrations you have. But we couldn't control warehouses configuring their systems the way they want to. And when they change their configurations, it might break a direct hard-coded integration you have for how they do things. Like if they add a new custom field or whatever to the system, it can become challenging to do that. But the MCP server will pick that up automatically. So does the appointment requirements endpoint. So if you build a really intelligent script that looks for a change and then wants to handle it, you can handle it that way. But the MCP server makes it irrelevant. It just handles it all. And that also allows us to add in new endpoints that add additional value to how you're doing things. And you don't have to modify your integration to take advantage of them. You don't have to do any extra work to take advantage of any of the changes we make to our APIs in the future. The tools will be discoverable by your agents. So any new endpoint we have to improve a process or add a new feature, your already existing integration, if it's using the MCP server for this, can take advantage of it immediately without any additional work on your part.
That's all of the questions. Thanks, Aaron.
Yeah. Excellent. Anybody have any other questions they want to ask? No? Yeah. So I built limits on there right now. I do have limits with our MCP server to make sure that it won't accept too many requests. Right now, I have it set as a moderate amount, and we're trying to find out what the right limiting balance is on that one, which is one of the reasons why I want to work with some of the brokers and 3PLs and carriers on scheduling appointments to see what those limits really need to be effective for that, so that they can still do the work that they need to do without just blasting a warehouse with a bunch of information they don't want. So we will definitely be able to put those limits in there. And in fact, we're going to have rate limiting in a couple of places. We're going to have it on the MCP server itself so that it's limiting what the agents will be able to automatically do. Fortunately, with agents, they'll recognize that they've hit a limit, and then they'll wait until the limit is gone and be able to continue with processes. So if you have a bunch of things you want to do and our limit is shorter than what you really wanted, you don't have to try rerunning anything. Your agent will submit what it can, then realize, oh, I have to wait a little bit before I can submit the rest of them. We're also going to put rate limits on. We're going to have to start working towards putting rate limiting on some of our APIs that we previously haven't. We're going to start adding that due to the scale and the growth that we're having right now, just to make sure that no single bad actor is affecting everybody else in our system. So we'll be adding additional rate limiting there. So you shouldn't have to worry about people pushing too many appointments to a single warehouse. Any other questions? Awesome. Looks like we finished a couple of minutes early here. Thank you guys very much. Oh, one more question. Oh, that's not a question, it's a statement. Oh,
Great
I'm glad
presentation,
you
Aaron.
liked the
Look forward to
presentation.
following the development of this feature. I think there's real value in this side. Awesome.
Yeah, it's something in our. I'll talk a little honest with you guys, right? It's something in our industry that we're moving towards this, but we're moving towards it cautiously. Not we as in LoadSmart and Opendock, but I mean the industry as a whole. It's jumping in some places and slow in others because integrations are expensive to build and they're hard to do, and people are unwilling to change them as much. I think that moving towards using things like MCP servers and whatnot for this will reduce the cost of those integrations. They don't have to worry about changes that happen over time. They don't have to know as much about the systems they're integrating with, which means less time. Your time to your first appointment using something like an MCP is incredibly short compared to the time when you have to understand the APIs, understand how they define their systems, understand the customizations, and then create an integration. And then again, as I said, if you create an integration that way, it's fragile in as much if warehouses change or if we add new features, you have to go back and pay or redo those integrations to get value out of those new features we've added. But moving to this world of using MCPs, you don't have to worry about that. It just happens for you. It's kind of beautiful. All right. Well, thank you guys very much. I really appreciate you here. Do you have any do you have any extra information you want to give them before we're gone?
Just a reminder that we'll be sending a follow-up email with the link to the recording and a link to the resources that were mentioned. And if they have any questions, we can provide them with your email and they can reach out directly as well.
Yeah. And I promise you guys, if you join up with this one, you're going to end up working with me directly a whole lot. Because I really want to see you guys succeed. I really want to make sure that your integrations are as successful as possible. Whether you're just using the old standard integrations, using our new appointment requirements endpoint, or moving down the MCP path. I want to help you guys come right along with it. So definitely reach out. All right.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good one.
Bye, guys.